The quality of the dance is reflected by the community that you build around it.
Doesn't matter if they're black or white or Hispanic or whatever, wherever they're from, dance immediately connects you to somebody.
And it just creates this intimacy almost with someone, even if they're across the room.
Everybody has different gifts. Everyone is unique and inspired in their own way.
The choreographic process of creating a dance that expresses an experience is empowering.
It's the how that we did it that's so important in the story.
When you dance, everybody sees everything about you.
You are an interpreter of other people's voices.
In my end of the art world of dance is really stretching to make changes about how dance is produced and what is dance.
It's your voice, and nobody can teach you that. You are responsible for finding it, for exploring it, and for figuring out how to make that voice become embodied in a dance.
I think that dance and art should be meaningful, and I feel like you need to think about something that's relevant, a story to tell.
Please welcome Bob Middleton, Director and owner of the Arts Insurance Program.
Thank you. I'm excited and honored to be supporting Dance USA and its membership at this year's conference. In 2007, I was first invited to speak at the Dance USA conference in Chicago, and I became immediately enamored of the organization, the passion, the enthusiasm of its performers, the administrators, and supporters. And ever since then, I've been trying to find a way to get to each conference every year. So I finally figured it out. Although we work with numerous organizations and their members in the arts community, I find that Dance USA has a unique passion and vitality that's shown through the honorees, through the individuals and the commitment they have to their art form. And I can say that this is one of my favorite events on an annual basis. To give an analogy, we find that the first dance company that I actually worked with was Plobulus in 2005. And as I was going up to their office in the woods of Connecticut, my alternator fell off of my 1985 Mercedes going up the New Jersey Turnpike. So they stapled it on, but I went to a car dealership and they sold me 3 batteries. So I stuck them in the back, and as I would drop one in, it would slowly, eventually fall, it would wind down, and so we just drop another one in. So that got us into their offices, and it was a white-knuckle trip, but I got back to Baltimore. And I find that at budget time and over the years, a lot of our clients have also experienced the white-knuckledness of the budgeting process or everything else. But the companies persevere, they survive, and they continue, which is amazing. And I can say that every year I find the commitment even greater. So I want to thank Amy, her staff, the board, the trustees, and the membership of Dance USA. Please continue your fierceness and your dedication, as we'll be in the seats. Thank you.
Please welcome Amy Fitterer, Executive Director of Dance USA.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome officially to Austin, Texas. It's so great to be here. So I am just very excited to be sitting here looking at all of you, and also to know that we have a live stream going on. So I would like to take a moment and welcome everybody who is also with us on the live stream. As you have seen through last night and some of the videos, there is just great dance here in Austin, Texas. And we continue to try to unearth and unpack this really vibrant community and showcase it nationally so that all of you can come back and continue to engage with this dance community. As you know, the Dance USA Conference is put together through many different partnerships, sponsors, funders, the staff, the board, and of course, the local community. So I'd like to start us off by thanking those people who have helped make this conference possible. If you could please hold your applause until I've gotten through the initial listing, that would be great. I would like to acknowledge our major foundation sponsors, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, Harkness Foundation for Dance, and the Schubert Foundation. I would also like to acknowledge our host partners, Ballet Austin, the City of Austin, Sterling Events, the Long Center, and the Palmer Events Center. Thank you. We also have more host partners this year than we've had in past conference cities in our campus style. So I would like to acknowledge the Austin Symphony, the University of Texas Department of Theater and Dance, Retail Me Not, IBC Bank, and the Austin Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thank you. And as you heard from Bob just now, I would like to acknowledge our platinum sponsor, the Arts Insurance Program. This year, Dance USA has some very special gold sponsors, really longtime supporters of dance in our country: DeWitt Stern, Harlequin, and Patrick and Jeanette Keating. Thank you so much for your support. And our silver sponsors are Capacity Interactive, Freed of London, KLRU, who made those beautiful videos that we've been seeing of the dance community, and the Texas Commission on the Arts. This year's bronze sponsors are Arts Consulting Group, Body Rappers, Management Consultants for the Arts, and Ovation. Thank you for your support. If you've been enjoying the Wi-Fi, if you've been enjoying the plugging and charging stations, if you've been playing around on the mobile app, a lot of our technology is sponsored by KMP, so thank you for that. And in true Austin style, those of you who know Whole Foods was started here, so we've got Whole Foods as a sponsor, the Alamo Draft House, Kind Bars, Tiff's Treats, and HEB. So it really takes a lot of people to pull this conference off. So let's take a moment to acknowledge who's here in Austin. You can take a look here up on this map. We have conference attendees from all over the country, which is just fabulous. And you know, we actually have over 130 first-timers here. So raise your hand if you're a first-timer. And if you have been coming to a Dance USA conferences for more than 10 years, raise your hand. Woo, look at that. What about 20 years? This field is not nearly as big as we think it is. So these are your allies, your colleagues, your peers. Please reach out to each other, learn from each other. This is why we come together, to acknowledge that we can have a fellowship together in supporting dance. So many of you are aware Dance USA has core values of equity, inclusion, and diversity. And I think it's really important that we take these on as values and not just a program here or an activity there. Having it be a value means that this is something that all the work that Dance USA does must pass through this value. We're certainly not perfect all of the time, but we're steadfast in our commitment to keep trying to be a more equitable, a more inclusive, and a more diverse organization. We also want to be working with all of you to be helping you and learning from you about how can we make our field more equitable. We are living in a very, very complicated time. It's exciting, it's full of opportunity, but it's also fraught with a lot of social change. Just in the past year, when I think about the things that I have been having to deal with as an executive director of an arts nonprofit, we have tremendous racial issues going on in this country, and we all need to fight for racial justice. There also are many different populations in this country that are oppressed and overlooked. And so really taking the time to understand what your personal power is and your personal privilege is to help you understand how can you help your fellow man. Because together, we need to be supporting each other to conquer what's going on in this world. I have also been having to deal with, there's been a constant increase in single shooter issues, and the National Endowment for the Arts had a convening in the past 6 months with a handful of arts leaders and individuals from FEMA and the Department of Interior to talk about emergency preparedness. This is something that is so low on a lot of our agendas as arts leaders because we're overworked and under-resourced, and how on earth do we make this a priority? But we have some very serious problems with natural disasters and the single shooter and active shooter issues that are going on in this country. So we need to think about that as well, which is really complicated when we're trying to also think about all the other issues. And then, of course, there's the religious freedom bills that we're passing through in the states. And these are discriminatory in their nature. So how do we deal with this if you run an arts organization in one of those states? So these are just some of the few issues that are coming at us from all corners. The funding sources continue to change. Our audiences continue to change. So how do we deal with this? That's why we need to be together, to figure this stuff out together. So a couple of programs that Dance USA is doing. One, we're really excited to be moving forward with our staff residency program. This is to help Dance USA get on the ground. We're based in Washington, D.C., and it can be hard to really feel that you understand what's going on in local dance communities unless you're there in person. So we're very excited that we are going to be relocating staff for a period of time to New Orleans, Kansas City, Portland, and Las Vegas. This will be taking place over the next 12 months. You will be able to hear and learn about our findings and our experiences at next year's conference in Kansas City, Missouri. In addition, a very important activity that Dance USA has been doing is expanding our national company roster. This is a listing of all 501c3 dance companies in the United States with budgets above $100,000. Up until recently, we stopped at that $100,000 marker, and we did not collect information on companies with budgets smaller than that. The listing had about 400 companies on it. It's the most visited webpage that we have. Well, we are expanding it to not have a budget constraint. And we are hoping that by the first quarter of 2017, we will be able to have a listing of all 501c3 dance companies in our country, regardless of budget size. And it will be free and available on our website. In addition, as many of you know, not everybody wants to have their own 501c3. And for some artists, for decades, they have not had their own 501c3. Whether or not you have your own 501c3 status does not mean that you are a great artist or not. It has no impact on your quality of your art. Dance USA wants to recognize those arts groups out there that are working as under a fiscal sponsor. And so to go along with our listing of 501c3 dance companies, we will also be growing a list of fiscally sponsored dance groups to validate and recognize them on our website as well. Another area that we've been working on is trying to reach the smaller budget dance groups and the independent artists. And so we're thrilled to be partnering with Fractured Atlas for a second year and to be hosting Dance Business Bootcamp. So this is all day tomorrow. If you are an independent artist, fiscally sponsored, or you work in a budget size $200,000 or lower, you are welcome to go to Dance Business Bootcamp. This is going to be broken up into 2 parts, in the morning and then in the afternoon. And it is free to all Austin dance artists with the generous support of the City of Austin's Economic Development Department. So thank you to the city for that support. We're also trying to balance out some of our work. You know, we still do the Dance Forum every January in New York City as a pre-conference event to APAP. This year we're trying out a pilot. We're going to do Dance Forum West at WA in August. It'll be in Los Angeles on August 29th. And because one of the biggest issues in our country in the dance field is about touring and performance opportunities, and how that is so drastically changing, it's getting very hard, and yet we're finding artists are fighting to find ways to perform. So we're going to continue to take a look at the relationships that you are making to create performance opportunities. And also at WA, we're going to be taking a look at how do you market the lesser known artist so that presenters can feel confident in putting you on stage. So you've probably been hearing about Dance USA's partnership with the Wallace Foundation. Again, trying to understand our changing environment, the Wallace Foundation has a major national program on building audiences for dance. Dance USA, along with our other national art service organizations, is serving as the communication sponsor. The Wallace Foundation has generously put this research report into all of your tote bags, taking out the guesswork, a guide to using research to build arts audiences. The Wallace Foundation convened a group of NSO leaders earlier this year, and one of the things I was most struck by was the power of really, really, really good market research. And also realizing that because we're frequently under-resourced, we don't do the market research that we need to do. So I'm grateful that the Wallace Foundation has been putting together their learning to share it with all of us. You'll also know that later today we're going to have a breakout session featuring 2 grantees who are just in the beginning of their work with the Wallace Foundation, but they have completed extensive market research with the support of the Wallace Foundation. So you'll get to hear from them, what did they learn about their communities? What did they find as a surprising fact about their dance audiences? And how are they thinking about changing their work to be more responsive? So we have a very special guest with us today. Many of you know that there is a new program director for the arts at the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation. Maureen Knighton is here with us to say some welcoming remarks to all of you. She's been very generous with her time. She was here all day yesterday with our Engaging Dance Audience grantees, and she's speaking on a panel later today. So it is my great pleasure to introduce the wonderful and exciting Maureen Knighton.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Amy, for that wonderful and generous introduction, and also thanks to you and the Dance USA Board for the invitation to be with you. I'm here on behalf, of course, of the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, very pleased to be with you. And I'm bringing greetings on behalf of our CEO, Ed Henry, our Board of Directors and the staff at DDCF, and of course my colleagues in the arts program, Cheryl Lee Kamia and Lillian Osi Botang. I've been a longtime supporter of dance, but never imagined myself in this position to provide even more support to the field. So I really feel a special privilege and responsibility in that regard. And I'm very excited about the work we have ahead of us collectively. I've been a presenter, I've been a funder, and a lifelong fan of the discipline, so I'm truly excited. I've been on the job now just about 7 weeks, and although I've not been there long, I know. Okay, but listen to this part. I've been meeting with a lot of grantees, and they all want to know, have you decided what the arts program is going to do next? Well, I haven't. I feel like I need to spend a little more time getting to know the grantees and doing some research before making any radical changes. I'm going to take my time with doing that. So although I can't tell you precisely what we're going to be doing 2 years from now, or even a year from now, I can tell you this. The Doris Duke Charitable Foundation is absolutely going to continue to support dance at the levels it's currently supporting the field, and it's my hope that we'll find new and additional ways to support the field. This is what Doris wanted. It also happens to be what I'd like, so that works out neatly, doesn't it? On that note, I want to wrap up by announcing that the DDCF board recently approved a $1.9 million grant to Dance USA to support round 4 of Engaging Dance Audiences. We are really pleased with what we've seen happen through that program already. We look forward to continuing to learn from and with the participants in that program, as well as from the field at large. And I look forward to meeting many of you over the remainder of the conference. Enjoy. Thank you.
Let's just have one more really big round of applause for the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation. I know we're in good hands with Maureen, and her years of experience at the Nathan Cummings Foundation and the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone and 651 Arts. She is just going to be a wonderful ally as we tackle all of these issues in our country. So now I just have a couple of fun logistics, and then we get to go on to the plenary and the conversation. I'm obsessed with our mobile app. So if you're not on it, can you please get on the mobile app? And if you want me to help you, I'm happy to help you figure out how to get on the mobile app. It is a conference that's taking place virtually at the same time that this conference is taking place. You can post any of your thoughts, your ideas, your questions. You can challenge each other. You can respond to each other. It's real-time dialogue. And one of the things that I also love is we can't be in all the places at the same time, and there's some very, very interesting breakout sessions going on later today and over the next 2 days. But when I'm sitting in a breakout session, if I glance down at the mobile app, I can see some of the comments that are going on. And later, I can actually catch up on some of the discussion that took place. We also have some competitions, because who doesn't love games? So the leaderboard, we actually, as you know, if you're on it, we're tracking who's winning, how many posts, you're doing. So we give prizes. So, and if it'll be at the closing plenary, we're going to announce the winners, and the staff keeps this a surprise for me what the prizes are, but we will announce them at the closing. So keep posting, those of you who are really competitive. And then we've already launched our selfie scavenger hunt. So you're just going to have to follow what's going on the mobile app, and the directions and the hints come up, and then you have to go somewhere, take a selfie with something, and post it on the mobile app. I think you need to make sure that you post with the correct hashtags, or else it won't count. Registration. This is a good place to get your questions answered. So please go to the registration table at any point during our conference for any kind of question. And then the staff, we wear badges that have blue ribbons on the bottom. So if you see anybody that's a staff person, please, first thank them, because we're actually a really small staff. So this is like our big event for the year. And then ask them your question. So now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Ron Berry, who's going to moderate what I think is going to be a very interesting discussion with our plenary speakers. I hope that they get to really go deeper. I was listening to their conversation in the green room just now, and I was like, wow, I should just be filming this. Ron Berry is the founder and artistic director of Fusebox Austin. This is a multidisciplinary arts organization. In over a decade that it's been around, it has won over 200 awards. It runs a major arts festival here. Ron is a down-to-earth, kind, funny guy who is extremely intelligent and extremely creative. And I feel very confident that you are going to be in good hands listening to this dialogue. This is also the first time we've ever done this year. We have opening and closing plenaries are the exact same group of people. And not all of them have come to a Dance USA conference before. So they are going to help us be a mirror for your experience. So they're going to go through the conference tomorrow, later today, and on Saturday. And then at the end of Saturday, they're going to come back and they're going to reflect as well. So I hope that you enjoy listening with them and then dialoguing with them over the next 2 days. So I'll be back at the end of the plenary, but enjoy.
Well, thank you. All right. Awesome. Hey everyone, thanks so much for being here. It's a real pleasure and an honor. I'm Ron Berry from Fusebox. I'm here with some esteemed, fabulous, amazing colleagues. We're setting this up as a very sort of informal conversation about some really juicy, I think juicy topics that are really vital and relevant. I don't know if any of you have seen this TED Talk about experts. There's this kind of wonderful, they're talking about how when you're in conversation with someone who has been framed as a sort of expert, that like literally part of your brain shuts down. So I thought that was like super interesting and actually has all kinds of implications, and we can sort those out over the next few days. But I think that also, to me, had implications for this. We are not experts, we are peers. We are here hashing things out along with you, and we look forward to hashing these things out over the next 3-4 days and then on into our lives. So that's kind of the spirit of this thing. There's kind of 3 or 4 general topics that we're looking at today. We're looking at funding, we're looking at technology, and we're looking at the social responsibility of dance and equity issues, which are obviously huge and vital and things we all need to be looking at. So we're just going to say a few words about ourselves, and then we're going to jump in, and then we'll talk with you all afterwards about this stuff. So she gave a quick intro of myself. We're a nonprofit arts organization here in Austin. We just finished our 12th edition. We started very small. We had a budget of $5,000 our first year, and we've slowly built our organization and our annual festival over the past 12 years. It began with really an idea and a desire to create a more meaningful exchange of ideas across art forms and across geography. I was a theater artist working in Austin. I think sometimes there's this notion that if you keep working at something, you'll slowly get better and better at it. And for me, I just felt like I was hitting my head against the same wall for like 6 years in a row. And then like in a 2-minute conversation with an artist from the UK, I was like, oh my God, thank you. Now I can get on with my life. So I'm a big believer in this notion of exchange and encountering ideas that are perhaps outside of your immediate sphere. And that's sort of what we built our festival around. And we've tried to build on that and invite other perspectives and vantage points into the shaping of what we're doing. And that's really at the heart of what we're doing. So that's a little bit about me. Do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. My name is Prakash Mohandas. I am the founder of AGNI Dance Company here in Austin and AGNI Entertainment. We started back in 2007 as the first Bollywood dance company in Austin. And since then, we've branched out into performance, education, fitness, and we also have an entertainment company that does touring Bollywood musicals in the US and Canada, and we work on film projects as well. So these are cross-border film projects that we mostly fund through film funds and other avenues. So we do a gamut of things, but we're really happy to call Austin our home.
Hey, thank you. Sandra?
My name is Sandra Organ-Solis, and I was formerly a dancer with Houston Ballet as its first black ballerina. And after my career dancing with them, I started my own dance company called Sandra Organ Dance Company, which I proceeded to change to Earthen Vessels. And that took its course, 16 seasons, and I dissolved the company a couple years ago, and I've now relocated to the Texas Hill Country with my husband. And I'm in a bit of a transition right now. teaching a little bit here and there and trying to meet the needs a bit of a more retirement community, which is underserved, I would say, in dance. And they need to be more served. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I'm happy to be here and bring my perspective. And I'm getting to know the Austin dance community as well. I'm rather new to it. I'm also straddling a little bit of work in the San Antonio area. So I'm just trying to put down new roots in the Texas Hill Country.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm Elliot Gray Fisher. I'm co-director of Arcos Dance, which is 5 years old, and we relocated from Santa Fe to Austin about 2.5 years ago. We focus on multimedia performance, so we're trying to figure out how to create at the intersection of dance, film, theater, new media, and visual art. And we're also excited to be part of the Austin community now. We've found it very fruitful since we've moved here. So
awesome, thank you. So let's just dive. We're just going to start talking about that. We were actually having a really kind of spirited, fun conversation in the green room about technology. So I just wanted to, let's just start with that little nugget. I think it's also particularly interesting in Austin, that is in a city that is experiencing, I mean, just massive change right now. And a lot of that is being driven by the technology sector. There's tons of companies and businesses moving here. It's a city that is very technologically savvy in many ways. And so I actually think that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot to unpack and talk about that. But so I just kind of open this up to all three of you and how you think about technology. I mean, I always sort of think about both the sort of infinite possibilities of technology and what we're able to do now that perhaps we weren't able to do. But I also think it's just really interesting to look at like what's happening to us culturally. Like what is our relationship with technology? Like this has become a new universal sort of gesture and like body position. Like everyone knows what that is. Like that's weird. So like what's happening to us? So let's just, dig in, start talking. This is the kind of action
we were not like this in the dressing room.
Well, our company is invested in working with technology, deeply invested in working with technology. And our perspective is we kind of try to take a historical look at it. And we see, we consider all of the things that we work with technologies. So dance is a technology. We include narrative, storytelling, very old technologies, right? And then there have been waves of, new technologies. Every time that they roll around, we have similar reactions. It's, what the hell is happening to us? It's like electricity, right? 100 years ago, the automobile, all of these things were major issues. And we like to think that maybe this time that we're living in is unique, but maybe it's a little less so than we'd like to think. So what are these digital technologies? One thing that you said is they give the promise, at least, of kind of endless possibilities, which is in some ways terrifying, because as artists, we want some kind of limitations and limits in which to work. And we don't know how to use them. They are changing very quickly, so that produces some anxiety. And what we try to do with our work is both try to figure out how to use these technologies that are being created, and make that a conversation that we're having with the audience. So the way that we use technology is visible, and we're interested in telling new stories and creating a mythology that reflects our contemporary society and the contemporary way that we use these new technologies.
So you don't tell them to turn off your cell phones or
no,
not text during the
sometimes, in fact, if they come to the show that we're going to be a part of tomorrow night and Saturday night, before our piece, we ask everyone to take out and turn on their cell phones.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we'll see how that goes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you, what's your relationship with technology? How are you thinking about it?
Well, I think I would think about it in two ways. I think technology, and when I'm talking about technology, I'm talking about digital technology. I think that differs in the way you think about it if you are an individual dancer that's dancing by yourself. You don't want anybody to watch, and you're a dancer, and that's your passion. That's fine. But digital technology takes a different shape for you if you are a performance artist. If you want other people to see your work, if you want the world to see your work, if you want to reach out to other artists, that's a completely different ballgame. Because think about this, like if you were a dancer, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and there was no internet. Imagine that to now, to how much dance you know, how much you know about other dance forms, and how many dancers you know across the world. There's a big difference in that. So adopting technology to me, as a performance artist, to me is almost inherent. It's something that it's a very active part of a performance artist's life.
As a tool to connect and share dance ideas, practices.
Right, and that links to, in my world, it links to funding as well. Because a big part of that is being in funding, or when you're talking to investors or other private donors, is to show the networking capability, your outreach. So I can't imagine anybody not pitching the idea that I have a website that reaches, I don't know, 1 million people. Like these kind of numbers are so important to the way we think about dance and the way we think about how people fund it, that it's almost impossible to not adopt it.
Yeah. That's super interesting. And we'll get back to the funding thing in a moment, but I'm glad that you brought that up. That's exciting. And Sandra?
Well, with my dance company, I found that having an idea of how many people had come to the website or how many hits was a great demographic or information to throw into a grant, report, to say that we're reaching more people through those means, as well as through blogs, and which is kind of probably old school to all y'all up here on the stage. But I think about the sites that are hosted by our peers, and I was very impressed with the memoirs of blacksinballet.org, and there's some representatives of that here today. Because, it's a chance to kind of take out your story and to present your story for yourself and also for others to see when the media is not coming your way, to ask those questions and to take charge over your own content. So that's the way I kind of see it. I also see it now as a movement facilitator, this thing. We're going to be correct in that posture till we die. So, and everybody's going to have a part in that, as long as we're doing this, and bringing it up and all the stuff, all these different things about our posture. So, being in a retirement community, I can see it already, and as we were talking about it being an extension of ourselves, like people are like, don't tell me I can't bring my phone, because it's an extension of who I am, and for our young people, that might be very much the case. But they're also going to have a hell of a time with their neck later on in life. So I would just say that we as dance movement specialists are going to have something to offer them. As those.
I love it.
Yeah, if not already.
I love this notion of, and this is in a way related to what you were saying, but the technology as a way to create these peer-to-peer exchanges, an exchange of information, of stories. I think it's really powerful that it sort of flattens and democratizes in a way that's like really profound. Obviously, that's not just something that's playing out in the dance arena, but all over the place. But I think, to me, that's been a really exciting development that technology has allowed. We were talking about a couple other things backstage that I thought were interesting, that were leading to other, this was spiraling into like really interesting. So when we were talking about, a few months ago, we were hosting this panel discussion with Andy B. Parson from Big Dance Theater, David Newman, and Oakley Akpakwasili. And they were really talking about their practice, their dance practice, and how, in some ways, not surprisingly, it was really rooted in their bodies. And there was a bit of a spirited debate between the three panelists and some younger folks in the audience who were really talking about this, not necessarily on-stage technologies, but specifically online platforms, Instagram, Facebook, a digital presence. And some people in the audience are really making the case that for them, that was an extension of their body. And that was part of their practice and their dance practice, was this online presence. And I think there was some real, in some ways, those were like two really different paradigm shifts. And I think there was a part of it, I think, was also some artists saying, look, this is my instrument and this is all I have the bandwidth to like really dive into and work with. But I also felt like there was a bit of a political statement that like being present in my body is a stance that I want to take and I want to own and that I want to be behind. This is what I'm saying with my work. So I don't know how you all think about that. If you think about that dynamic, it feels like a shift in how we're thinking about our bodies.
Yeah, one of the things we were also talking about backstage is artificial intelligence, which is this hot topic that is in more and more articles every day. And we're actually working on a show that deals with this idea of artificial intelligence, which everyone's talking about is going to become prevalent and may even exceed the capabilities of humans. But one of the things that we've considered as we've talked about this is that the body is the gap. I mean, our technology is extremely advanced now. We can sense all sorts of things, collect all kinds of data, but there's something ineffable that we think at this point, from everything we've seen so far, we don't think maybe our technology will be able to reach.
Yay.
Yeah, maybe we're foolhardy in believing that, but we'd like to think that that's the case. Just in the way that they've talked about, 40% of the jobs that exist today will be replaced by robots within the next couple decades, right? At every level and in every sector. We like to think, we hope that artists and artistry and the creative process and the very irrational kind of work that we all do a lot of the time will never actually be able to be replicable, that we will actually remain relevant in some way as humans, right? With bodies, as much technology as there is, right?
Yeah, actually, this is a conversation I had with somebody recently about how much of the aesthetic sense would a computer be able to eventually learn in being able to create some of those things. I think so. Being in the arts field, all of us, I think, have a vast advantage over AI from how we know it now, and that's going to be great. But there was a point that I think you brought up about collaborative portions of it, and I think that's what's going to be, I think, cool when it comes to technology going forward with dance is we know now that music is very collaborative. You can make music across continents, no problem, mostly because it's available in some kind of written form, and you can exchange it in written form, and people can understand it. Unfortunately, dance is still a very visual, physical medium. We have things like Laban notation, but nobody really uses dance notation to communicate, saying, "Hey, I created this piece. Go read it," right? But it might change. We might be able to come up with some kind of a language that breaches that barrier, eventually makes dance very collaborative. Talking about simulators and things like that, I could create a dance piece with my friend back in India online, and we're actually looking at each other while we're dancing. And these are all future state amazements that can come into the way dance is created. You're still using your body, but you're just putting things on it.
So is this something that you're already doing?
Yeah. So I'm working on something called DanceScribe 1.0, which is a language for dance. Primarily created through Braille for the visually impaired, but it's meant to also solve the larger problem of creating what we call dance theorists. If you think about music theorists, there are people who can write music, there are people who have been blind who have written music, but we don't have anything like that in dance. So it means that if I'm a visually impaired person, I have to be physically taught. I can't read the same dance and do the same dance as 5 other people if it's just given to me in writing. And that is what we're working on. So it's 1.0 because we're just trying to develop the model, but it's going to be open source after that.
Wow,
so
that's super interesting. Nice. I think it's also interesting to think about again, I was sort of alluding to this earlier, and maybe we'll sort of allow this to shift into some other things. But again, in Austin right now, the tremendous change that the city is experiencing, a lot of it, not all of it, is related to technology industry. And I hear two things a lot. One, that like a lot of the new money that's coming in is very hard to access. This is a very tough nut to crack philanthropically, so there's sort of that thing. And then I also feel like it's what it's just kind of inherently doing to the cost of living here, that so many long-time, lifelong residents and as well as artists are getting priced out of this city. And Austin is not unique in its experiencing of this problem, but I think Austin is experiencing this in a really profound way. To me, when I think about funding for the arts in Austin, I think that in some ways it really has to begin, or at least one of the first conversations we have to have is actually just space for artists to be making work. That there is increasingly fewer and fewer, especially if we're talking about affordable spaces for artists, dance makers to rehearse, to make work, and show their work. I don't know if you all, what your current experience with this is, if you've seen other examples in other cities, other strategies for tackling this issue, but I'd love to hear from you with regards to this.
So I think this is at least my perspective on maybe a solution. And this is kind of drawing from other sectors or other industries that use this model. So if you think about the startup technology sector, they have these wonderful co-working space models. I don't think our community uses enough. There are spaces that we have that we rent, which is quite different. And you want to say co-working space is a rental model, but I think one of the ways to solve this problem might be that community, local folks are not relying on an organization or a charitable foundation or somebody to build something for them. The way to think about that might be to kind of get together and start working on these co-working spaces. You know your capacity, you know how many hours you rent, you know how many hours you want, you know what kind of performances you do. Start getting together and start looking at more collective spaces for dance, and not, like I said, not wait for somebody to build something for you.
Did you want to talk about?
Just a little bit. I can just only talk about what's happened in Houston. So there was a small group of arts organizations who got together and had a huge needs assessment in depth done by a consulting firm, and that brought many performing arts groups together. And that took almost 5 years, but now they have this beautiful space called The Match, and it's somebody yell it out. What is it, the mid? Thank you. It was a little bit too much of a mouthful for me to remember. The Match, which I thought was great. And it's right across the street from the historically black theater, the Ensemble. It's on a rail station line. Awesome. It's got, a contract with a restaurateur, so you can come there and have snacks. There's a breezeway. It's a lovely space. And before that, although Dance Source Houston had taken over the occupation of what we call Barnevelder, or the barn. And that was also really just meant for dance, and the dance community came together with a local modern dance company who started it out and built 3 spaces, 2 rehearsal spaces, and a little small black box. And that's where a lot of the dance in Houston, in the mid-sized, the smaller arts organizations took place. And so now they have these 2 venues. And so there have been and then I think there's just a lot of the universities have gotten new spaces, as well as, you've got a ton of dance academies and fitness studios that don't always have, hours of operation that everybody's there. So I think people get creative with that and forge those kind of relationships, or barter and say, hey, I'll teach a ballet bar class, and I'll use your space to rehearse my company. So those are just some couple of things that you can do. And I'm just a big fan of the local YMCA. Too. I mean, they have amazing studio space that sits quiet most of the time when they're not doing the booty bar. So.
And how about
Yeah, well, I think what Prakash said is really right on. Like, thinking about collaborating, there's a mentality of kind of scarcity. Like, there are not enough resources, so anything that we can scramble for, we need to protect. And there's a lot of territorialism, unfortunately. But it's based in kind of a culture and a mentality that can be shifted. And if you just, realize that you can cooperate and collaborate to solve some of the most pressing issues like space, you're stronger, you know. I think that's a really effective way to think about it. And, you know, it ties back to the technology, and the technology is a communication medium. It's just a way to connect people ultimately. You know, I mean, in fact, that's what we're doing, like at the base of everything, right? We're just creating ways for people to get together.
Just one more point to add to that, if you don't mind. And I think, in my opinion, dance spaces have to probably start evolving into multi-purpose spaces. Because if you think about a studio, just like if I think about as a real estate owner or a producer, the amount of time that a studio does not get used is significant, right? So if we don't eventually move to a model, for example, I'm building something here in a bit that's a multi-purpose space, which is obviously there is a dance space in there, but it's also a coffee shop. It is also an event space. It's also a social dance club. And I'm just maximizing it. But the only time that the studio would not get used is from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. Every other time it's getting used.
That's awesome.
So I think there's a lot of value in bringing those kind of spaces that where, unless you're very particular that your dance space has to be a certain way, it enables the idea of you potentially being able to fund your own space. More people are interested in being partners with you because there's other aspects to it. And that solves some of these problems of just it being a dance studio.
Yeah, I love it. I think this is, we've been really inspired by these centers in Brazil that are run by SESC. It's a giant foundation. They focus on access, providing access to different things that people don't always have access to. I went to this one in Sao Paulo. It focused on 3 primary areas: the arts, athletics, and dentistry. And it's like sort of the holy trinity. But it was like actually super, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous and kind of profound. As someone who works in the arts, this idea that the arts are not this thing separate from life, but actually the same thing as brushing your teeth, the same thing as going for a walk or a swim. And I think it also gets to what you were talking about, that, you know, these things, the proximity of these things being in the same place was actually really powerful in the way that positioned and arranged the arts in relationship to civic life, in relationship to a healthy life. I think this is actually really profound. And to me, that also then begins to perhaps open up some other avenues for funding, whether it's earned or whether, like, perhaps you can start looking like health funding. Do you know, like, it's the way that we are situating our work within community, within city. I think actually has a lot of room for some really interesting, powerful new relationships. I would also say that are you all familiar with National Sawdust in Williamsburg? It's a new music venue, but the structure that they used to get it built, I thought was actually really interesting. It was, this is my sort of rough shorthand, so forgive me if I'm butchering this, but a small group of investors bought the land, got the building built. The facility is run by a nonprofit. It's a music venue, also community space. The plan is that after X number of years, the investors will donate the property to the nonprofit, but they're able to donate it at the appreciated value, which in Williamsburg, 5, 6, 7 years from now is greatly appreciated. So that was a way of giving the investors a considerable return on their investment, even though it's all just basically tax write-off. So anyway, I thought that was actually a really interesting idea. We're currently looking at a sort of hybrid model of government funding, private donation and philanthropic support, as well as private investment on a 24-acre site that we're working on in East Austin to achieve a lot of these things that we're talking about, of permanent affordability for artists. And I do think as part of that we have to look at ownership. Like, I think artists have to have some sort of long-term control and ownership over their own situations, or this is just going to keep happening again. They'll put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and energy into a space for like 5 years, and then they get priced out and have to go. So I do, to me, ownership is, or some variation or form of that is really important.
Yeah, and this model to me is also a means of how do you constantly bring people towards dance, right? I think the idea actually was inspired by this random event where we were in a fitness class, or fitness class was going on, and there was a 4-year-old girl with her 65-year-old grandmother who came to the class, who came to get coffee. And they watched this dance class, and they both came and attended the class. So there is a big pulling factor in making classes itself a performance aspect. If you notice, I think Ballet Austin does this great thing where they have glass walls on their bottom floor. Everybody walking past it is looking at dance. So making dance more visible, even if it's just being taught, even if it's just a fitness class, is what this other model does, is where it makes it more of a space where people are relaxing, doing their own thing, but they're constantly viewing dance. So that's a
great point. And I also want to circle back to your comment about how you're using technology with regards to your fundraising. Can you talk a little bit more about that specifically?
Sure, it's classified, but...
Everyone has clearance, we've all...
Yeah, well, I think it's an indirect relationship for me. It's not, and obviously the first thing that you think about for most people is crowdfunding, GoFundMe or Kickstarter and things like that. But that's one avenue, obviously, that's very active. But for me, the technology aspect is more indirect. I think what it does for me is being able to use different technologies that are out there, including YouTube, be it web outreach, be it social media, is more of building a base or building the right kind of links and the right kind of hookups to be it people, be it the end user, be it common audience that I can show. So for me, it's more projection. So technology for me is always something that I can leverage to show that, okay, this kind of dance is being projected to so many people, or this is the different aspects of it that it covers. And that's what the way in which we get funding is in two ways. One is obviously the traditional routes of city and state level fundings, for which you need this data anyway. But we also actively have a model where we treat it like any other investment model. If you're part of the stock market, to think about how people invest in diversified things, there is a way of taking a subjective medium like dance and making it more objective, where people feel less risky in investing in something. And this is a way for me to do that, is because I show them a diversified way of what they're investing in.
Awesome. And so when an investor comes in, are they investing in particular, is that project-based? Talk about that.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the points that I wanted to talk about is we inherently, I think, at least most of the companies that I know, including us in the past, have been very project-focused. How many of you apply for city funding here in Austin or any other city? All right. How many of those are project-based funding? Okay, so I think the shift that will slowly need to happen, or that kind of funding models might exist, but even in the city of Austin, for example, a lot of the funding happens based on projects. And what you're going to find is very few people from the private sector or from angel investors. There will be people, but there's not going to be a lot of people investing in just a project. So I think the way to show or improve that is to show them diversity. To give you an example, I have a film fund that I work on, and that's talking about 5 films. Now, if I were an investor coming into it, I can be like, oh, I'm going to make this grand film. It's going to be like this best ever, better than Titanic. But nobody's going to care. They're going to be like, okay, great, but you're a first-time filmmaker. What do I know, right? So the way to make that more objective to them is say, I'm going to make 5 films. The chances I suck at all 5 is probably very minimal. And even if I make one of them work, you still make your money, right? So what happens is you're diversifying the number of people you're approaching with this, create smaller units of investment, but you're also diversifying and you put each of these films in different markets. You're not saying, I'll make 5 romantic comedies. They might be great, but you might be a sucky romantic comedy director, right? So what you want to do is try and diversify as much as you can, and this is not just film. I've found that even in our dance projects, for example, we do musicals. So let's assume that I'm saying we have 3 musicals over the next 3 years, and this is our projection. So going to people and telling them that this is what it is I found it an easier sell. And more importantly, they're investing in you, not a project. So that's very important to know that you have to come out as a completely rounded, knowing your plan sort of person, more than saying this project is the best in the world. Everybody says that.
Amazing. Do you all have any other thoughts on sort of fundraising?
Just to jump on to diversity, you know, I think one of the reasons that we found ourselves increasingly, we started out mainly kind of working in contemporary dance, concert dance, you know, for the first year or so. But we experimented with, I'm not a dancer or choreographer, so I brought video and the theatrical and music, original music into the mix. And thinking about a hybrid form, it opens up the number of venues we can look at. You know, we can perform in a theater, we can perform in a gallery space, and we can, and those are silos that are often sort of, you know, separate from each other in worlds that don't communicate as much. So that helps you find what you're looking for. We try to look for unexpected collaborations. So, you know, our previous show was inspired by my grandparents' relationship. She grew up in Dresden during the war, and he was American. So it was thematically about war and seeing each other's enemies and trying to see each other's humans after war. And so we thought about, you know, looking at war museums and, you know, the military, veterans organizations, all of these organizations that would never you know, go out and look for a dance performance, you know, and see if they would be a part of a collaboration, you know, extremely diverse, you know, truly interdisciplinary, and first-time collaborations, you know, a dance or a theater presenter and a war museum, maybe would never have met each other otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
I just want to check,
How are we doing?
How are we doing on time? Oh, great. Okay, we got 15 minutes. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about dance and social responsibility and equity issues. To me, this is just impossible to be living in our country right now, to be working as an artist, and not thinking about these issues. I think obviously our country has a long, complicated and by and large awful sort of relationship, particularly around race and gender. And I feel like these issues are very front and center with our culture and our life right now. And it feels impossible to be running an arts organization or be an artist and not thinking about these issues. So I just kind of wanted to generally open it up to you all and see how you're thinking about social responsibility, first of all, just as an artist, what that I feel like that can take any number of forms. I think there's as many reasons for making dance as there are people in this room. There's obviously not like one reason to be doing this, but just wondering how you all are thinking about this, different strategies and tools and that you're using and thinking about.
So in my artistic direction of my own dance company, I made works that I thought were relevant to people of color in my community, because I didn't really see that there were a lot of ballets or marketing that was addressing the increasing majority in our city, in Houston, and certainly in our state. So we did a Black History Month concert, so that was kind of empowering and raising untold stories, the stories of heroes and history and all of that. So that was kind of a centerpiece of our season. But I also would reach out to the community for their voices, including them in the conversation as well as in some of the choreography and the stories that we told. We developed also a piece about Cesar Chavez, and I was kind of amazed in bringing high school kids to it who'd never heard of him, who were juniors in high school. And I raised the discussion with them about who's deciding what gets in your textbooks. But that's Texas. So they need to be aware that that's Texas, and that's not every place else. So, you know, so in a way it was kind of awareness raising, and I always felt it was kind of a cool thing that maybe they'd come to, like we did one about comedians, and we explored the, your mama jokes and where that came from, and we had video clips and stuff, and it was interesting, telling dozens. It was our 12th season, so I said we're going to play the dozens. It's just little things like that would just kind of spur off conversations, because we would always have a talk back, and actually exploring the fact that maybe something like the dozens isn't necessarily a good thing that our community has been known for. And so just raising discussions. I've also participated in, my company's danced about immigrants, fair trade, organ donation, breast cancer, Underground Railroad, saints, sinners, and slaves of yesteryear and today. Anyway, but I think our audiences always learned something new when they came to our concerts, and we got a lot of information from first-time comers to dance that they would come back because there was something about them. They might maybe go over and see Houston Valley, Swan Lake now. They'd seen some people dancing in point shoes about something that meant something to them. So I feel like a lot of the smaller and mid-sized organizations were doing some of that groundwork in Houston at the time that I came up to kind of be that bridge between the big ballet company and all the other companies. And so once we kind of filled that role and other people stepped into the fore, it was a good time to lead the scene. But I think it generated a lot of interesting ideas amongst people about what they could do with dance. I was also taken part in the Urban Bush Women's Leadership Institute, which I applaud. I saw pictures of the one I was involved in New Orleans last night during Jawali's tribute. And I think they do a beautiful job in showing you how to engage with your community and to incorporate some of those ideas. And I mean, we came to that with homework. It was, why are people poor? Well, wow. So we had discussions about that. We had discussions about racism. We had discussions about white privilege. We had discussions, and it was a mixed race group. It was activists, dancers, college professors, artists in the community, musicians. And then we pulled our resources and we put on 3 site-specific works. It taught me a lot. Liz Lerman was also part of that, and all of her institutes and all of her community engagement stuff is really great as well. And even just sitting here watching you guys talk, I'm already picking up all your gestures, wanting to make a dance out of them. And as I usually, when I give a speech, I once was asked to, and this is just a sidebar, but give a valedictorian, give a speech for somebody's high school. And I thought, oh God, nobody remembers who spoke at their high school. So I made them dance. So I gave them 5 principles of their school. It was a Sacred Heart school. And every principal had a little dance move, and the whole audience learned it, and then we did a little dance at the end. So I think anytime you can open that door and let somebody come in and dance with you and show them how easy it is to compose. It's not so easy, but given the basic principles of composing a dance, they're also feeling like they're a little more educated when they walk out, like, oh, well, maybe, we could put together a dance, so why not? So a lot of the reason I feel like I'm here and still in the dance community is that and one of the things I explored at the Leadership Institute was that I'm a gatekeeper, but in a different way. So I got a chance to come and sit at the table. I've been part of Dance USA since it started. So I've gotten to serve on its board. I was a dancer representative. I've been a company member representative. And so I got a chance to sit at the table. So once I did, it's like, okay, so I've opened the door, let's open it for more people to come in. And I see that today, after pulling out of Dance USA for a few years. I'm really excited to see some of the new values that are going on. But all that to say that we're all gatekeepers. We decide who gets to come to dance. We decide who gets to dance. And even now in this new community I'm in, with older people, they get to dance too, I want to make sure that there's an opportunity for them. Because as Ms. Williams said, it's such a profound experience we have dancing. And how dare we deny other people the opportunity to partake in it? So one of the things I felt like Cookie asked us to do is ask you a question. And so one of the questions once you take into this conference is, who's not here? And why aren't they here? And invite them in. So,
awesome. Thank you.
talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, no, I think it's remarkable. I think absolutely there's this question of how not only who is on stage, but like who is invited and who is doing the inviting, and how we make space for more people to be doing the inviting and pointing at what the field is. What we think of as the field. I think we need to, that's just like a lot of ongoing work. We need to keep creating space for other people to shape and define what we're looking at and thinking about. What about you? How?
Well, I think I look at it in a couple of ways. One is, I think the performing arts have a unique ability in being able to convey something to somebody without language. And I think it is a way or a medium for you to get more people to listen. And when I say listen, I include visual listening. I don't know if that makes sense, but you get the point. What I'm trying to get at is, I think we have a unique capability or a unique responsibility that we have better access to a lot more diversity or a lot more people in communicating the same topics that cannot be done by speaking it, or cannot be potentially done by in one particular language or things like that. So I think art has to be a medium for people to listen, but what you convey within that, I think obviously is potentially issues that you surround yourself in, or you expose yourself to, or you find yourself in, right? So, for example, the language that we work with the visually impaired is something that happened mostly because I was finding that when I was working in that particular space, there was a big gap in how they express themselves, or the way they want to be taught. So I just decided one day to blindfold myself, and I tried dancing. And that changed a lot of things. So I think experiencing some of what you're speaking about is important when you talk about social issues, or putting yourself in that space clarifies what you're trying to say. I mean, I'm not saying that blindfolding myself is anyway equivalent to what they're going through, but it gives you an idea of what the gap is, right? So that's the two things is I think you have a responsibility to be able to communicate to a larger audience in what you're saying, but also the fact that you should at least have some background in the content of what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I think connected to that, it's important to really listen, and important to kind of be historians and try to understand the context of the kind of infrastructure in which we operate. Like in a more traditional, thinking about ballet, for instance, has its roots in Europe in a very sort of patriarchal structure, and we've inherited that legacy, and it's really important to be aware of that and to call it out, and to be, as you mentioned, to say something like, okay, here we are on stage, and there's 3 men on stage, and how does that connect to, is that in any way representative of the number of dancers, as far as gender goes? There are 2 white men on stage, to be able to recognize that, speak about that, together is the first step. I mean, thinking about everything that's going on politically in the country right now, we need to be able to communicate honestly about it first. And then, those of us who, can recognize our privilege and the position of power that we have need to be able to work actively to listen to those voices that have not been, been able to express themselves.
Listen to the voices on the margins.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's often, I often find that those, groups in the margins are working at really interesting places aesthetically and artistically and creatively because of not necessarily being, having access or, having gatekeepers keep them out of whatever this established thing was. A lot of marginalized and underserved populations are actually working in the most kind of innovative and relevant contemporary kind of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. a good friend, Kara Martinez, who has been working with us on this Think East project, she just finished her PhD on the history of experimental sort of radical performance in East Austin. And she was looking at these sort of cultural expressions that are typically not viewed through that lens, but they're like the Juneteenth parade. It's actually this amazing, actually super contemporary radical performance that is typically not viewed through that lens, but it's actually just as contemporary and radical and experimental as a lot of the stuff that we kind of view over here. So I think it's really essential that we keep allowing different lenses to help us articulate and look at things and define things in different ways.
I know one of the more profound things we did at the Leadership Institute I was involved in New Orleans with Urban Bushwomen was that there was a local drummer who was very famous and on the streets, and he had just recently died. And so they actually, instead of having him lay in state, they had him like standing up in front of a drum, which was really bizarre. But then they had a second line, and so we took the morning off and we went and participated in that. And wow, what a profound thing that was. And awesome. You know, I just recognized how art and just that procession and that dancing and that music helps people with grief. And I moved to Wimberley, which is north of here, west of here, which had a huge flood on Memorial Day a year ago. And 12 people died. It was a huge, massive tidal wave basically came down and took out a lot of the trees along the river. And so I was coming also into a community that felt like they were grieving, that they were tired. And I thought, you know, what can dance bring to this? Well, one of the local churches had also decided, well, let's bring in one of these second line bands from New Orleans who's used to going around and kind of ministering to people. And it was something really neat and deep about that. And so I think that social responsibility can be right where you are, noticing what's happening around you, and, you know, if it's Black Lives Matter, going and participating in some kind of a protest act, like we did at Rice University in Houston, and we just stood for an hour with signs. Some people laid on the ground, chalk around them. I mean, but it doesn't have to be a lot of movement, but it's standing in solidarity with your community, and trying to offer them something with your art form that can really help them through the process of grief or loss or, you know, new life, and let's move on. I think that's an important way that Leeds artists can contribute as well. So the social responsibility isn't always about something deeply political. It can be about just life's happening.
Participate actively as a citizen at the same time as being an artist.
I love it. Well, I think we are now actually at a moment where we are wrapping up this portion. We're going to continue this conversation hopefully over the next few days, and we'll have another one of these conversations on Saturday. We hope you join us, and hope you join us throughout the next couple days, in between panels, shows, over drinks, over food. Love to hear your own thoughts and continue to hash some of these ideas out. I think that's over it. Amy was going to come back and...
Hi. Thank you. It was extremely interesting. Lots of great stuff. Good food for thought. So thank you so much. Thank you. Let's have one more round of applause for our plenary speakers. Thank you. I also would like to just take this moment while I still have you as a captive audience and ask you to give a really warm round of applause for the Dance USA Board of Trustees. These are volunteer members from all over the country who work in our dance field. We have over 40 trustees right now. You can read about them on our website. They all came in a day or two early for our meetings. So very grateful for your leadership and your voice. I also would like to take this moment and thank the amazing Dance USA staff who is hiding. So please thank them when you see them. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you outside.